Hello, thank you for watching. In this video, we're going to learn how to paint with a palette knife. It's a lot of fun. You put a bunch of paint on your palette and then put it on the bottom of your palette knife and then apply it to your canvas. We're going to start with a background. Of course, I've scooped a bunch of paint onto the palette knife, and I'm using the edge of the palette knife to define both the edge of the circle and also the line that divides the table from the background. So you can see my brush strokes here are very loose. I want to be able to see the brush strokes. In fact, I want each brush stroke to be individually distinguishable. Leaving gaps in between the brush strokes will help me to do this. Another thing that will allow me to make my brushstrokes interesting is by mixing different colors into the background. So adding just a tiny bit of white with my dark value for the background. And I'm simply going to mix these strokes in with the dark strokes that I've already made. Next, I'm going to paint the table with a much lighter value than the background. Notice how I've left some gaps in between the strokes so you can see the underpainting. Now moving to the circle, I'm going to turn this circle into a sphere by adding the different parts of light and shadow. And I'm going to start with the core shadow. The core shadow is a mixture of black and blue. Notice how I'm leaving gaps in between my strokes so you can see through to the underpainting. I'm also using the edge of the palette knife to sharply define the edges of the sphere. When I finish painting the core shadow, I'm going to paint the terminator, which is where the shadow of the sphere transitions into the light. And so I mixed white with the blue and black of the core shadow. Now I'm painting the halftones, which is part of the light area of the sphere, but not the lightest area. It's where light is hitting the sphere indirectly. The lightest area is called the center light, and I'm going to mix white in with blue and a tiny bit of black. It's mainly white. And I'm going to leave some gaps through to the underpainting so that you can see the individual strokes. Don't want to overpaint this. I want this painting to look loose. That's part of what's special about using the palette knife, is just the looseness of the style when you paint with a palette knife. Now I'm painting the reflected light. The reflected light is a little bit darker than the table because you have light from the table bouncing up onto the sphere and creating that reflected light. Now in between each part of light and shadow, you want to make sure that you kind of smooth those values together so you'll have a nice transition. Okay, now I'm painting the cast shadow, and I'm going back to a very dark value. I mixed black with blue again, and around the edges of the cast shadow, I'm kind of mixing that in really well with the table so that it looks blurry there. All right. I'm going just back and touching up the sphere and making sure that each part of light and shadow transition nicely into one another. All right. Thank you for watching.